So if you want to start the recording, Nancy,
I have started the recording.
All right, thank you. So welcome back once again for, I think this is now our 8th call for preschool special education during COVID. And as we've said every time before, we are really glad to be together with you. And as those of us in the office and with Lisa as well, we're talking through this, we know that the ask of your time during this time of the year is a large one. We know that it's end of school year, so thanks for carving out that hour that we can be together, and hopefully you'll find this time to be well spent. So our agenda for today, like I mentioned to some people as we were getting started, has got a lot of details to it. And I think it's in response to some questions we had from the field, some stuff that's coming out nationally, and some stuff that's happening at MDE. So we're going to talk about the latest national resources from ECTA and OSEP. We're also going to be talking about the Build Up Michigan curriculum. That's very time sensitive. So Christy's going to be addressing that, and really want you to pay special attention to that piece because we have another ask of you there. And then we'll also cover, as we usually do, the latest and upcoming guidance memos from MDE. We want to touch briefly on the My Safe Start document that came out, I think it was May 7th, well, I'm pretty sure it is. And that had some guidance or some information on schools. We want to just clarify where we're at with that as well. I think there's been some confusion in the field, and we just want to help clear that up. There's also the district provided professional development and instructional hours. We're going to talk about that. We've gotten some clarity on that piece, that kind of confusing piece, but that's really, it came out back in October 2019 of being able to use professional development as instructional hours. And so for Lisa Perugi and Elaine Tadajewski, who have been asking about that, will provide clarity. And for the rest of you, I think it's going to be informative as well, maybe something you want to look into using. And the last thing is we're going to give you an update on the Substitute Senate Bill 873, which is the one that codifies the executive order regarding pupil accounting and attendance. All right, so like we said, a lot to cover, so we'll just jump right into it. I'm the guy there up at the top, Mark Kuipers, Preschool Special Education Content Specialist, and hopefully at this time you know the usual suspects, but give Lisa and Nancy a chance to introduce themselves as well.
Good morning. In the event that there's someone new on this call today that does not know who we are, I am Lisa Wazak, Preschool Special Ed Coordinator with the Department of Education.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Nancy Siebert-Goins, the Training and Technical Assistance Manager at the Office of Innovative Projects. And I'm going to walk you through, just like we've talked about on every single call, our process for our calls. Please mute when you're not speaking. If we're asking for chat or polls, please feel free to share your perspective in the chat or in the polls. The recording of this meeting today will be available afterwards on our website, which is detailed there, and a PDF of the slides will also be available upon request. So those are kind of our ongoing processes. And this is a slide of our website, the Office of Innovative Projects website. The web address is circled in red, and on the right-hand side, you can always see all project news and look for the preschool special education updates with the date afterwards. So this one will say preschool special education updates June 25th recording. So you can find that, and then you'll find previous ones there as well. They're all available for you to share or listen to again if you would like to.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. And just to follow up on what Nancy was saying, or to emphasize that, a number of you have been asking for the PDFs afterwards, which is great. I've been emailing those out. Know that if you open that PDF on your computer rather than printing it off, all the links on the resources we talk about will be embedded in that PDF as well. All right, so let's go right into the national resources from ECTA and OSEP at this point. Some good stuff has come out. And one of the things that came out is dispute resolution. There was something that came out for both Part C and Part B on this, and it's about the rights that parents have for dispute resolution. This document really talks about that, as usual, There are no waivers of rights for parents during the times of COVID, so that all dispute resolution rights and procedures are in place at this point. So really, they're just affirming that it's business rules as usual, but business procedures perhaps are a little different, if that makes sense. So in other words, you can use an alternative means of meeting. You can have a virtual meeting rather than face-to-face. But essentially what they're saying through OSEP is that know that the parents' rights to dispute resolution are in place. And if you want to read further on this one, the link is down there at the bottom and you can certainly download it. But that's just a brief synopsis. It is a Q&A document. And really one of the statements I thought that was most definitional on this one is that the document does not impose any added requirements beyond those already applicable. So essentially saying business as usual. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to you, and if you need that, you may want to log on and download that document. I'm not sure if you are aware of the webinars that OSEP is putting on. This will be the second one that they're putting on regarding COVID. And I think that's one that you may want to register for. Know that this is a registered event. Lori Vanderplug is actually going to be on this call, and they're going to be talking about the provision of related services through remote and distance methods. It's on June the 29th from 2 to 3 p.m. And again, you know, a lot of these things, I think those of us that have worked or are working in the field are feeling like, wow, some of this stuff I needed yesterday. But I also think it adds greater clarity to our paths moving forward, because many of you have said, and we've had those conversations as well, that some of the ways in which we are now thinking about providing services have changed. Even as we return to what will be normal, it's going to be a new normal. And so I think this will help to add some clarity to that process of what is it going to look like when we head back to work? Is it going to be the same old, same old? Probably not for a number of us. We are looking at other ways of providing supports to families. All right, so there's the registration link at the bottom of this one if you'd like to be part of that. It's as it says, it's a webinar, so there's really not much chance to have a back and forth conversation, but there's usually a lot of good information that's provided by OSEP on these calls. We have talked a number of times about ECTA, and those of us that are working in the field are probably pretty familiar with it. What I did want to emphasize again, and Lisa and myself and Nancy and Christy, we've all had conversations about the dynamic nature of the ECTA website right now. It is changing, if not daily, weekly, and they have a whole page on provider and educator use of technology. You've got the landing page right here on the screen itself, but there's also further up, if you go to this page, further on down, there is a video that you can log onto and see, and it's remote learning at Big Walnut Elementary School, which I know, Lisa, remind me, you said there were some places in Michigan as well, right? That have done some videos?
So I had her, it was shared from Michelle McManus from GSRP on my call with her yesterday, that Lewis Cass was featured in Exchange article. And I don't know if it was in March or May. I'm thinking it was more May. And I was looking for that to be able to share, and I don't have it, but if we can find it, we will. But it's pretty cool that we just have one of our local districts being shared at the national level.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Well, so this is a school not here in Michigan, so it gave me a little bit of pause because it's actually in Ohio, and I gave Lisa a little bit of grief about that. She being a Buckeye. Not to call you out too loudly, Lisa.
Gotta represent when I can.
Well, and I think what was, a number of us have had the chance to see this video. I think it's about 35 minutes long. But it really does a great job of, I guess, both demonstrating the complexity of the work that our teachers and supervisors were called to when we were told, all right, remote learning is what it's going to be all about, and the ways in which they brought together so many thinking processes, so many personnel, and so many pieces of technology to provide for families a meaningful remote learning experience. So there's a few of the pieces that you'll see there on the screen. Their schedule, they use Schoology almost as a social platform to keep families involved. They have a social emotional piece to their educational or remote education. That's at Show Your Caring Heart. They also have both synchronous and asynchronous learning. So they have some of the things that they can do that, like a story time, they record earlier. They also have regularly scheduled Google Hangouts for their preschoolers. And just some of the pieces that they bring, which you in the field probably already say, yeah, I get that, I know that. Just in terms of talking through, what does it look like to have a small group remotely for preschoolers? And how did we make that work? And they have a good sense of humor about it too, that it was learning as they went, but they had some good summary statements as well that you may find interesting and helpful. And as I said before, a number of you are already talking about, hey, we're going to be doing some things differently and providing some remote learning experiences even after we get back to our new normal. This may be something that you want to watch, because they do actually talk about things like providing related services remotely as well. So just something for you to take a look at when you get a minute. And I think you'll find that enjoyable. The link again is down at the bottom, and I think that Jory's doing a great job of pasting these links into chat as well. So if you need them, they will be there. So let's get back to a Michigan focus. Instead of those Buckeyes, let's get back to our Wolverines or Spartans and start talking about what's going on at MDE. All right, well, I'll turn this over to Christy at this point for a little update on the Build Up Michigan campaign.
Thanks, Mark, and I'll invite Jeannie to turn her camera on so folks can see her and to say hello. I'm Christy Callahan. I'm Director of the Office of Innovative Projects at Clinton County RESA, and you all know we do a number of things for the field and for parents, and we have a training and TA side of our house, and we also have a child find side of our house where we operate 1-800 early on and Build Up Michigan. And so Build Up is our child find initiative for preschool special education. Jeannie, I'm wondering if you're, yep, there you are, I see you. So can you say hello?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeannie Hunzis, and I oversee our Build Up Michigan campaign. Yeah, so I'm happy to be joining in on this meeting today.
Thanks very much, Jeannie. And so I wanted you to be able to see her face because she's our point of contact for this work. And if you have questions and I'm not available, she's a great resource for us. And so last week we talked a little bit more extensively about this new opportunity. And so I just want to remind you, because we have a deadline, if we could go to the next slide, that your expertise is needed. We are thrilled to have this opportunity to partner with 10 PBS stations statewide to develop an at-home curriculum to support our Michigan preschoolers. And so today's the last day to express your interest or to nominate a friend or colleague to express their interest and have them complete the form. But we're developing a curriculum committee, and we'll be working pretty quickly and intensely to develop content that we can feature before and after programming on these PBS stations statewide. And it'll be an opportunity for ISDs to partner with local PBS stations and to support content that will support our preschoolers with delays and developmental disabilities in these next few months. And so if you have any questions, I'm available. And please, if you're interested and you haven't completed the form, complete it today, as our deadline is 5 o'clock today. We need to get rolling with this good work.
Yeah. Thanks, Christy.
Yep, thank you, Mark. And I'm gonna pop off the call. And so
Okay.
if you have any need for follow-up, feel free to email me or Jeannie, and we'll be happy to answer your questions as we get this initiative launched. So thank you.
All right. Yeah, it's been really exciting. I've been in on some of the calls that have to do with this, along with Christy and Jeannie, and just the idea of being able to take information and supports that we provide in a school setting, and I don't want to say change them substantially, but put them in a format that is really routines based for families, so that they can move forward and feel like I know exactly what I'm doing. I have the resources I need, and even thinking about how do we partner with PBS so that it's really applicable information that parents come back to and say, this really is working for me well. So the link is there. I think it's also been posted in your in the chat. And like Christy said, it is close of business today that they are actually going to be done taking applications. So if you feel like your expertise and time allows for you to be part of this process, we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. One of the main foci of the whole thing is social emotional development, because as we talk through it, we know that children that have been out of that social arena for a while now, that is probably where we want to start with some of our conversations. So join us if you can and you have the ability to do so regarding your schedule. Love to have you be part of that. All right, so let's get into some of the memos that have come out recently from MDE. Just so you know, these are all available on the MDE website, but just want to make sure you're aware of each of these. And the one that came out most recently is affirming early intervention as part of the community of learning plan, continuity of learning plan, sorry. We've heard this before, but Dr. K has come out once again saying, make sure that your early intervention programs, GSRP, early on, ECSE are all part of, from May 7 forward, May 7 at the latest, are part of your continuity of learning plan. As we said before, it's crucial that it be in there because it does impact whether or not your programming is considered to be in place and funded for the remaining of the school year. All right, so I won't harp on that anymore, but just to know that because memos are still coming out about this, there may be some questions in the field. If you do have those questions, please feel free to forward that question either onto Lisa or myself, and we will certainly get back to you as soon as possible with any responses or answers that you need. All right. We did talk before about summer learning as well. It's kind of where we're all heading at this point, right? It's talking about summer learning. MDE also came out with this brochure that we talked about last time. The good part about it is that it's a great resource in a generalized way to send out to families. Probably the downside for those of us that are in early childhood special education is that it does not really do a great job of addressing children with exceptionalities, and especially children with exceptionalities who are preschool age. So it's one of those things you may include in your learning packets or end of year packets as you send home. So let's not spend too much time there because I think we've already talked about that quite a bit. But we did want to talk about summer programming, because I think there's been some confusion about where we're at with summer programming, and we want to provide you as much clarity on that matter as we could. I think there was a memo that came out on June the 12th, and it just talks about everything that has to do with summer programming. So the stay-at-home order was lifted, then the executive order permitting regions 6 and 8 to move to phase 5, and then the executive order 2020-120 permits schools extracurricular activities and summer programming for children after the end of the school year. So that's where we're kind of at right now, is after the end of the school year, we're closing in on that on June 30. And so we're in this place right now, even though I think we all know this, even though your classes may not be ongoing right now, end of school year is June 30. So let's have that be our first point of clarification, because I know some people have already said that, well, school's done, so now we're talking about summer programming. actually, July the 1st is your first year of your new school year. So that's the first bullet we have there. And at that point, may occur in school buildings or other settings. But look at the final bullet down there at the bottom, that any work that can be done remotely must be done remotely. And so I think we're at this point kind of in a phase where we're saying, wait, we need a little more guidance on this. So that you know there is more guidance coming out. The projected date is June 29th, so just before the new school year, that MDE will be coming out on guidance regarding services to students with disabilities. So any extended school year services you are providing at this point still have the same stipulations in place in terms of remote learning. They are not to be face-to-face at this point. So hopefully that adds some clarity to your thinking in terms of timelines on this and where we're at with it. Lisa, anything more that you would want to bring people up to speed on this one?
No, really, I think you've covered it really effectively.
Okay. All right, well, let's go on from there then. And as we talk about updated guidance, we're not going to spend too much time here because I just want you to know that updated guidance is coming out. Noelle Kelty and her office have come out with updated guidance. It was actually on June 23, so recently breaking. We bring this to the conversation in early childhood special education because we know that there's a number of you that wear two hats or more than two hats, and maybe addressing the needs of children in the 3 to 5 range, as well as children in the birth to 3. So this is, I think, a 12-page document and just gives guidance specifically on Part C and talks about the waiver for 1862, eligibility determination, C2B transition, and electronics consent and signatures. But the last thing that I think is kind of telling on this one is that Noelle has said in here with Dr. K that there's going to be upcoming guidance for returning to in-person services. A number of you, in fact, I would say probably the majority of you are already starting to talk about that. And on our national calls, probably the first thing, again, we were on a call yesterday, Lisa and myself, where one of the most crucial pieces they are talking about having in place is just either polling or contacting parents to say, hey, we're about to rebuild things, or we're thinking about reopening. Where are you at with this? Because we don't want to cook a meal that nobody wants to eat, right? So you want to end up saying, hey, what is it that we are ready for as a district? And what is it that parents and families are ready for? Given the reports that many of our families are providing us in terms of, I just need my child to go to school so I can get back to work as well. That may be where they're at. Others may still be very anxious about what are the health impacts because we have at home my grandmother and my aunt who has some health issues. So thinking through those things, all that to say, reaching out at this point at the individual ISD level to your constituents is probably the right next move, or the first move you want to take. There's going to be more guidance coming out from MDE, not just regarding early on, but ECSE as well. So I'll be looking for that. All right. So here's a few things you can be looking for. The governor's going to come out with Michigan's return to school roadmap on June the 30th. And there's also possibly going to be a new executive order defining educational services. So that would replace Executive Order 2020-65. And so be looking for any executive orders that may be around the same time. And MDE then, of course, would be providing some memos that go along with the executive order. So as we start looking at what does next school year look like, you may be wanting to look for these items. And that will help as you start charting your course and your way moving forward. All right. So one of the things we did want to talk about was this document, because I think it has added some clarity in some levels and has also added some confusion that hopefully we can talk through today in terms of what does it look like for Michigan to move ahead with a safe start. This was put out on May the 7th. I alluded to that a little bit earlier on this call. And first, let's just talk about the 6 phases of a pandemic. because as people are starting to talk about what phase they're in, what phase a district is in, areas 6 and 8 being in phase 5, while the rest of the state is in phase 4, now you know what those are. So uncontrolled growth would be 1, all the way down to post-pandemic, which is 6. And right now the whole state is either in phase 4 or 5, and that is defined by this Safe Start document. All right. So there's the map, and this is as of May 22, and the phases are shown on the map. So phase 5 is containing or low risk. Phase 4 is improving with medium risk. And that shows you where we're at. And once you know where you're at, then the document actually tells you what sort of things can be happening during those times, including healthcare and, of course, for us, education. I think that's where some of the confusion falls, because when we talked about what does phase 5 look like for our friends in the UP and the upper part of the Lower Peninsula, there's actually a bullet statement in there that says that at phase 5 you should be returning to live instruction in K-12 and higher education. However, the executive order supersedes this, and there is to be no in-person educational experiences until the end of the school year. So just know that this is a more generalized document, because it also goes on to talk about phase 4 and talks about education there with remote learning. But again, this is not your guidance document. This is more of a generalized document giving you the background information on which you can operate. So those of you that are in phase 5, this document does not give you the guidance to move forward. It is just a generalized document, so don't take it as gospel in terms of how you're going to provide services at this point. Hopefully that makes sense to you. If you do have questions about that, either type those in the chat or email Lisa, myself, Nancy, or Christy, and we will certainly get back to you as soon as we can with an answer, because I know this has kind of been an area of great confusion. The last thing we did want to say about this is that the piece that's been somewhat confusing, especially for those of us in education, we have our educational regions, right? And so, the Upper Peninsula is Educational Region 1, and then the upper part of the Lower Peninsula is Educational Region 2. That is not how this document operates. So you need to kind of disregard that as you hear what is it that the different regions may do. The regions are defined by the document itself. So as you hear that region 8 and 6 are open, now you can see where those regions are. Right, so there's Detroit region, Grand Rapids region, Kalamazoo region. You see them all right there. Just know that as the governor is talking about reopening, it's probably going to be by recovery region, not by educational region. That has been somewhat confusing to some people as well. So hopefully that clarifies that for you a bit as well. And you will be able to say, oh, region, they're saying region 4. Well, that's Saginaw region. Now I know what they're saying about Saginaw region. All right. So all of this to say, as we were going through this, I know you've seen this screen so many times, and I looked through it again this time. We all looked through it and said, is it really time for us to kind of put this screen aside? But as I read through it, ensuring the safety of children, focusing on child and family, demonstrating good faith efforts, and emphasizing feasibility and flexibility, not only do I think all of us acknowledge that those are skills and behaviors that we need during this time of reopening schools, I was struck by the fact that this is really the climate in which we constantly work on early childhood, is it not? So I think really depending on skills that we were already using, but to a greater or maybe different extent, is really what our work is about. And I think it's really going to be called upon in you once again as we move forward with reopening schools, just ensuring safety, reopening schools, focusing on families, reopening schools, trying to get children what they need, and then above all, being flexible and feasible. All right. So here's the piece that, well, I hope I'm not bouncing from topic to topic too quickly for you, but we've had a number of conversations about using district-provided professional development as ECSE instructional hours. So for those of you that may be new to the call or new to this conversation, there is the provision in Michigan's school law that allows for you to use some of your professional development days as and count them as instructional hours. So how that works for an ECSE has really been the question that Lisa and Elaine and others have sent our way a number of times. Lisa Wozak and myself have been working on this and trying to come up with the right information so you can move forward. And I guess a couple of things are super pertinent at this point. First off, I want you to know that if your professional development hours last year actually met the requirements of this bill or of this measure, you may use those hours as instructional hours, or actually you're going to want to use them as days now with the waiver. You may use them as instructional days as you move forward with your 144 days. All right. So there is an application that you need to use because many of you that were probably not planning on using those days did not file for sketchies and things like that, which is required. There is a application that is linked below that you may use to apply to MDE for sketchies on your professional development. So if you want to do that for this year, go ahead and download that application and send it in, and they will retroactively, I think this is a one-time deal, right? They'll retroactively give you sketchy approval for it. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about what these look like, because this is where the questions have come up. You may have up to 38 hours that are actually counted as instructional hours, 38 professional development hours that are counted as instructional hours for students. That is, though, for students that are attending, shall we say, a full day program of 1,098 minutes. So here's where the guidance has come in, and this is what we want you to know at this point. For children that have the requirement of being in classes for 450 hours ECSE, you may prorate that and have up to 16 hours of professional development that is counted as instructional hours. Hopefully that's providing you clarity. That would be the 16 hours that you may use next year. You're really not going to worry about that too much this year because we have the day requirement there. Here's the other part that this provision allows for. You may do the math to calculate those hours into days as well. Here's how they define a instructional day, though. For many of you that are providing ECSE classroom program services, you have classroom program days of a little over 3 hours or 3.5 hours per day. That is not what you will use to divide those 16 hours. This provision actually provides you with the instructional day time of 5 hours. So they say if you've had 5 hours of district provided professional development in a single day, that equates to 1 day of instruction. So sounds a little confusing, but you just take the number of hours and divide it by 5, and that gives us 3 days. So you may have up to 3 days for ECSE or ECSE classroom programs. So I hope that those of you that are new to this conversation do not have your heads spinning about this, but as we talk through this, it is something that's relatively new. Actually, when Lisa first asked me about this, I said, well, there's no such thing. Well, I didn't say there's no such thing. It actually caught me a little flat of foot. And so I went back into there and did some looking. And I think we're at a place where we've got some understanding on it right now. But if you want to go back and take a look at the original memo, it was effective October 1. And the memo came out on November the 1st. And it provides you with all the qualifications that go with it. I will forewarn you that there's a lot of stipulations that go along with it. The multiple requirements, it must be part of your district improvement plan. You must have an advisory council that recommends it, must align with your teacher evaluation tool. You must register or apply for sketchies, apply for and get sketchies. So there's a lot of pieces, no more than 10 hours of qualifying district provided PDD before the start of school or in a single month. So if you're interested in looking at this, please take a look at this memo. Again, that's linked at the bottom of this page and probably in chat right now. So you can use that if you're interested in moving forward with using district provided professional development as instructional hours in ECSE classrooms. All right. So let's move on from there. Your hair must be blowing back because we're going through things so quickly at this point. Let me just pause for a second and ask Nancy if there's any questions in chat as we've gone through this content so quickly, anything that we should address.
There aren't any questions in chat right now. We do have a message from Lisa from Detroit saying thank you. I think that explanation was just what she needed. If there are other questions people have, if you want to feel free to put them in chat, be happy to read them and talk about them.
Yep. Okay, how about if we give them a few minutes to think through that, and I'll move on to the next piece, and then we'll pause again. As we get toward the end, we had a conversation today. I think we've already gotten your feedback before, and we'll probably ask you to put in chat any additional comments or questions you have of moving forward with our meetings. We're thinking about moving forward with a monthly meeting after this, but we're also talking about so what during the summer. So we'll get back to that conversation. I just wanted to give you a little heads up on it at this point. And we know that right now is probably a time that we're hitting you in the middle of a very busy time of the school year. So we'll talk further about that as well. All right. Wanted to bring you an update on Substitute Senate Bill 873. And remember, this is the one that codifies Executive Order 2020-65, I'm sorry, the waivers, and says, hey, we can now use the language of the waivers to count student attendance. It has not yet passed. It is in bill analysis right now. If you go and look at this link that's at the bottom, all arrows are pointing toward this being approved. Again, I want to say, and I know it sounds a bit like a broken record, but it's going to be crucial that your early childhood programs are documented in your continuity of learning plan. That is what gives them validity for funding. So the conversation once again was about if they are not in there, there may be forfeiture of funds because you are not a, let's call it a bona fide program operating during that time of remote learning. Right, so this is an update from June the 3rd, 2020. And so as you look at your calendars, you're thinking, my gosh, let's get some decision on this, and hopefully that's coming soon. But as I've said, all indications are that we're heading down the road to approval on this one. All right, so that brings us to the next piece, which is we want you to know that there's going to be one, I guess we'll call it final COVID call on July the 9th. Our hope at that point is that we will have all the guidance and executive orders and the governor's roadmap all in place, and so we can add clarity to what we know about that. Take your questions at that time as well. It will be at the same time, 11 o'clock in the morning, and so hopefully you can plan on that piece, and we can kind of talk about what does it look like to reopen schools or go back to some sort of in-person provision of instruction. Before that time, early on, is going to have their Tele-Tuesday on June the 30th at 10 o'clock in the morning. Noelle is going to be talking about the latest guidance that she and Dr. K have put out. And so those of you that are wearing both those hats will want to make special note of attending that Tele-Tuesday call on the 30th. All right. So at this point, as we're kind of wrapping up, if there's any thoughts you have about moving forward after July the 9th, we'd welcome those in chat. I don't know that we need to belabor that too much, but we in the office want to have that good conversation about looking at your needs and meeting those well, but also knowing what your schedules and demands are on your time currently. And so we want to reflect upon those, and if there's something you'd like to add to that, and saying, hey, I just can't do this until such and such a time, or typically what's most helpful to me is if we could meet, monthly or every other month. These meetings for Lisa and myself and Nancy, I think have been very good just to be in touch with you, and I hope you feel the same way. And we'd like to have this be part of our ongoing process with you, so that at some level we meet more regularly. So any comments you have about that, please put in chat, and I will go from there and turn it over to Nancy, ask if there's anything left. And we were intentionally going to be a little bit shorter today because being end of school year, we want to give you that gift of time, but we also don't want to cut it short and not leave any questions unanswered. So Nancy, let me turn it back to you for anything that's in the chat.
Thanks, Mark. I have one comment. These 1-hour meetings have been very supportive and valuable. I would welcome monthly meetings. Is from Lisa, and lots of thanks for the updates coming from other people. I don't see any questions at this time, so we can give people a few moments if they'd like to add something in the chat. And as people are thinking about what questions they might have or what their recommendations might be for ongoing calls, I did want to share, one of our slides had a little boy sitting in the mud puddle, and I wanted to share a interesting fact with everyone that June 29th is International Mud Day. If you are working with any preschoolers, preschool classrooms or anything, it's an interesting thing to note, because we all know that most preschoolers love to play in the mud. I did as a preschooler. So you could do lots of things to celebrate that at a safe social distance with your infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. Okay, maybe not infants, but definitely those that are mobile might want to play in the mud.
Yeah, as we were getting ready for this call, we came to that slide on district provided professional development. I said to Nancy, well, that picture is because I just feel like we've been in the mud on this one for so long trying to figure it out. She goes, well, it is National Mud Day on the 29th. And I said, yes. Who knows these sort of things? Where does that come from, Nancy?
I don't know. It's one of those random facts that I have in my head.
I see, that's how it goes, though, for all these calls. All my colleagues will tell you that Nancy was supposed to have time to actually provide that information on that slide. And so my apologies.
It's okay. I've worked my way into sharing it.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks
right.
for the updates from Megan. Everything's very helpful. Kathy is saying the same thing. So
great.
Looks like we don't have any questions today.
All right. Well, we can stop the recording then and let you guys get back to the passion and chaos of your work. And we thank you once again for